Okay, everybody, welcome to another week of my of Anime for All podcast. Where this week we're reviewing episodes of My Hero and Dragon Prince, season 4, episode 3 of Dragon Prince specifically, and episode 9 is season 6 of My Hero Academia. Like we did last 2 weeks, we're going to start off with Dragon Prince. My co-host has told me that he has a lot to say, and I'm buckling in for the long haul. Hopefully, we don't have a situation like we had last week where I was stuck on something that I had to go out of my way to prove because it was going to bother me the entire week. I think that was worth the comedy bit, but sometimes sticking to the
What
bit
comedy
probably
bit?
isn't.
What comedy bit?
Me essentially not like giving up on what you like about like arrow like that butterfly being being a messenger or something like that. And are you saying that it's supposed to be arrows? Though this episode, I'm still kind of confused because I'm not sure what the staff is for, but I guess we'll.
You're watching episode 3. I don't think the cocoon's even in episode 3, is it? Oh,
Well,
we're
the
watching
queen,
4?
episode 3. No, the queen isn't. Wait, what?
The queen's in 3, but not the cocoon.
No, well, I was
Not the
talking about
first.
last week's bit of me not giving up on the whole cocoon thing. Were you saying that the cocoon's supposed to give birth to Eros' new body or something?
Mm-hmm.
That comedy bit from last week.
That wasn't a comedy bit.
That's a comedy bit for me. uh, okay, you can take the floor or whatever is left of the floor here at this point.
All right, so we open up episode 3 with Rayla introducing some new merch for sales on Netflix in the form of that little creature that she gets. And I'm pretty sure that the only reason that creature exists is for merch. Are we agreed on that?
I mean, yes, but I don't get why you're shocked because that's what bait was. It's in his name too.
Bait.
Yes.
Why is that in his name?
He's merchandise. Baiting little kids to get the plushie. It's literally in its name. They knew what they were doing when they made him.
I liked the dark humor of calling him bait. So, anyway, so we start with that. And then we see Rayla's returned, and Soren has really, really mixed feelings about her being there. And she's like, do you want to talk? Do you want to hang out? And he's like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, did you want to like not kick me out and I'll just stay? And he's like, I guess. And they resolve a little bit, but not like a tremendous amount. And Bait, apparently, who's very wise and respected in this series, is even like, everybody seems to be accepting Rayla back except for Soren, but that stands to reason because like she had accepted Soren's deep feelings for her, so I kind of get it, you know. But that's a weird way to bring Rayla back because I mean, I was looking forward to seeing her, and it's just interesting that like it's with such mixed feelings that she's returned. What do you
Well, I
think?
mean, she up and left him. Like, it's even forgetting that apparently she left on his birthday. She left at all, and then what we find out is, I guess you're gonna get to this point. Um, she left apparently because, well, one of the reasons, I'm pretty sure it's not all the reasons, but one of the reasons she left was she was trying to confirm if Varen was dead or not. She didn't find a body, and apparently she was gone for 2 years, I guess, trying to figure out if there was a body or remains or any sort of him anywhere. Doesn't find
Uh-huh.
out, and then comes back, only to reveal not only did Soren know that's why she left, she has nothing to show for it other than a cute little stuffed merchandise, fun-loving animal that we're going to see probably on the streets of next year.
I mean, I don't blame them for it, and it just seemed Bates seemed like part of the show, and this creature seemed a little
Bates
bit disturbing.
stole a plushie. I'm sorry, I've seen that thing too. I'm pretty.
Bait is like Bait is a reasonable part of the show. He has an ability that becomes relevant. He is literally
Bait is a
bait in some
reasonable plushie.
situation. He has a full personality.
He's a
He's a
reasonably
character.
full
He's on the committee.
personality, charismatic plushie.
He's on the committee. They couldn't start the meeting until Bait showed up.
That's because of Prince. What's his name? I forgot his name.
Really,
Yeah, I literally forgot his name.
Ezra?
Yeah, Ezra, Prince Ezra. You know,
Okay, but what I'm saying is like he's a character that like they consider
okay.
indispensable.
Here's my question towards you then. Did you think Bait was gonna be at all relevant at all when he first showed up in the first season?
Mhm.
I don't believe you.
Because I didn't think he was going to be on the King's Council, and I think that's a little stupid. But his ability to glow, anything that can glow and has sort of a loyal, heroic nature, is going to have a day like that, you know.
We don't know what that spatter thing can do. I mean, just because it showed up out of nowhere and it's always gonna sell plush, but you never know. I mean, Bait did the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Glowing to me isn't really all that useful unless you come out with situations that the characters have to be in where glowing is gonna help them out, which they have done on several
It's a
occasions.
distraction. It's a light in the night.
Again,
It
situations where
he used
glowing
it
would
once.
help.
I think he used it once to blind an enemy.
Again, a situation that they manufacture to have glowing be helpful.
I don't know. I think glowing is useful.
In various situations where it would be helpful. It's not like an immediate helpful thing. I mean, yeah, being able to light the way is very helpful. Distractions is very helpful. Blinding, I didn't know he could blind somebody. Apparently, I must have missed that memo.
It comes up. It comes up more often than Ezra's animal kinship ability.
I'm 50-50 on that on, but she brought in being helpful. We'll see. Probably won't. I just want to be that
Just
guy. I just want to be that guy. This is all I'm doing this for.
so the next thing they see is the relationship between Claudia and her boyfriend. What is his name?
Terry.
Terry. Thank you. I found an interesting reference there. It's actually so awkward it kind of broke my suspension of disbelief. You know what I mean? It just seemed out of place to me. But they quote a word for word. They quote a 1944 film that's very popular with Humphrey Bogart. It's like one of the most famous quotes from there, where the female role character says, "You know how to whistle, huh? You just put your lips together and blow." And they do the same thing here. And I know he farts, and that's cute and all, but like, it was such a word for word reference to 1994's To Have and Have Not, with the with her having like one of her most iconic moments. I've heard quoted in other things, and that's why I looked it up. It just kind of broke broke the suspension of disbelief, broke the magic from me for a minute, because it was distracting in a way that doesn't build on anything, you know.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like that was just part of the whole he's in love with her and he'll do anything for her, which, by the way, we see at the end of the episode, but we won't be getting to that
I
just yet.
know, I know that they're establishing he's in love with her and they're kissing, but it's the dialogue choice that I'm talking about. The fact that he word for word quoted a 1994 real life movie with Humphrey Bogart in it and Lauren
I mean, I've heard
Bacall.
these word for words from other shows, like you've already said. And then again, I've never seen this this like play or movie you're talking about. So I guess for me, it's not as like I just kind of like laughed a little bit. I think I kind of took my hands off. I mean, I took my headphones off a little bit during that, and I didn't hear the fart. So yeah, that part I didn't hear. But
It's
yeah,
approximately 5:03.
I'm not gonna go back and listen to that. Just so you know. I mean, you can put the timestamp all you want. I won't go
Yeah,
back.
take my word for it, but it's also there for the benefit of the listeners now if they feel like listening to it. But yeah, it was really weird because it's an extremely famous line from the silver screen, and I didn't get why they would reference back to it in that way. It just didn't make a whole world of sense to me. Anyway,
I probably this thinks maybe you're reaching, but apparently, I mean, you're able to pull it. You're able to pull this little article here, so I had no choice but to believe you, because I'm not gonna go through like the rigmarole that I would need to do to like believe it. So I'm gonna believe what you're saying. I haven't seen this movie, so I mean I
it's
can't.
also forced.
Hmm?
I mean, it's also forced. How is she going to signal to him by whistling if she's like in the deepest parts of this dragon's like lair?
I mean, who's to say that elves don't have enhanced hearing? Again, that might be a
Um,
stretch. Who knows? But I mean, it's never been discounted or it's never been proven either.
I think you're working awfully hard to disagree with me.
I
That's
mean,
pretty
there's
much
other
it.
media where elves have really good hearing. So I'm
For
basing that
sure,
on
dude,
here.
but I think like with nothing to indicate that, even if this is true later on, like I don't think the user's going to intuitively like headcanon the crap out of that to carry it over. It's just a disruptive scene, made even more disruptive with the fart. And I get that they're trying to make these people awkward, but like there's chemistry where they're awkward, and then um there's chemistry within the awkward, and then there's like just bad writing. And that
A
moment is
part of me just thinks you don't want this to work. Like it seems like to me, and I'm gonna say my honest opinion of that scene.
and the matter of fact, the
I didn't
farting
care for it.
sound, according to the subtitles, is Claudia, not him.
I
Claudia
didn't
makes the farting
I didn't like. I mean, to be real about that scene, I didn't care much for it. But it's so much I didn't care much for it that I'm not gonna try to analyze that scene. And I know you don't really like Claudia that much. You don't hate her. Just saying you don't like her that much. I don't know. It feels like maybe you don't really want that relationship to work or something. I don't know.
You're still stretching, dude. I don't care if the relationship works. I just wondered why they broke it with such a weird like reference.
I think it was just there. I don't think it needs to mean anything.
Yeah, it's a weird reference. The whistle, like I said, the whistle isn't even likely to work.
I don't, I know I get that. I mean, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about. I think it was just there. I think it's just one of those things that they decided to have fun in the writing room for. Because I mean, that stuff does happen. I mean, even those well written shows are gonna have something in there that doesn't really mean anything for later. I mean, even people who write Avatar are gonna have that kind of scene. I think there was several things that did in Avatar that didn't really have anywhere to go. They just kind of put it in there for just to have giggles. And somebody did put that in there as a reference to Humphrey Bogart. I don't think there are gonna be that many people who are gonna pull that out. You're one of the few that I think I heard, and I'm pretty sure there's more, but not everybody was gonna, I guess, pull that from Humphrey Bogart. I could be wrong. Dude, I like to hear people who actually say that to me. But you're gonna have to prove it to me that you knew that you know you've had that idea before you listened to this podcast.
Okay. I've heard that line come up a few times, but it's usually not something they try to build into the dialogue. It's just something that like usually it comes up in like a comedy skit or something like that, or in the original. I've never really seen someone try to use it. It's kind of a weird ass line, really. Like, I don't know. It's a weird line. You know how to whistle, don't you? Well, who? When does that work? It didn't even, in my opinion, it didn't. I guess it worked back then because like anything seductive in the 1940s was like, a big deal. Like, that common line where someone says, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." That at the time that it came in was like rocket. Um, like it was the first time anyone had sworn in film. So that's like why that line is so famous. So her saying all that stuff, she's very like outside of her time in this in the 1994. Because if you watch the rest of the scene, she's very sassy and combative, and then she kind of like that's her parting words. She says that to him as they're parting ways, and he kind of leaves him like stun locked as she walks off. He's like, "Oh, okay," and it's great and everything, but like, and it's also like in that one, it's a reference to the fact that they were kissing a lot, like because she kissed him once, and he's like, "What's that about?" And she said like, "Wanted to see if I liked it," and he goes, "So what's the verdict?" And she goes, and she says, "I don't know yet." But in this one, it's the opposite. Like he's trying to kiss her, he's trying to kiss her instead of she's trying to kiss him, and they reverse it to the point where, but it's like, and then I think she makes a fart noise, and then like, or she mimics, he farts, and then she mimics the fart noise, and it's just not my favorite moment. I like Claudia like as a character. I don't like I wouldn't want to know her as a person or anything, but I like the character Claudia. Like I think she's a fun addition to the scene. I don't understand why the writers did this, whether it was Claudia or anybody. If it had been Soren and Rayla, I would have still not gotten it. Because it doesn't make sense. The whistling doesn't make sense. The quote, like referencing a quote that has so little to do, you know, with what was going on there or something. Like if they quoted a famous Star Wars line or something, that would have probably also bothered me, or any other famous line. So I don't know. It's just very awkward. It's a line that doesn't make sense in today's context, but was a big deal back then because in the 1940s, anything that was like seductive was like a really big edgy thing to do. Just to be seductive in the first place in the 1940s was like a big deal. And that's why it's important back then. It's like one of those things that was a big deal at the time, but like historically, like it was genre changing, you know what I mean, and groundbreaking. But like afterwards, it was things were done a lot better and it was normalized, and it's just not the same thing. So like a lot of Tolkien, for example, like you know what I mean, a dwarf being grumpy, like it's used, it's a regular trope, things like that. But like in Tolkien's time, like his rich description of dwarves and elves and things like that was something that became a template for the future. But this just doesn't have any relevance now. It can't even be understood by a younger audience in the way that it was before because people are seductive in like gum commercials now, you know, like chewing gum commercials. Like there's nothing like that's not seductive now. It's like TV is compared to back then, TV is basically porn, like any TV. And like even like an episode of the Family Feud gets more edgy than stuff from the 40s sometimes. So that being said, I'm leaving it at that. I'm not going to discuss it anymore. Like it's just an awkward line,
I
and
mean,
I
I'm gonna
thought it
just
was
one last thing about this. I really don't think they were putting that line in there for it to be analyzed. I think they were just trying to. I know you don't believe it, but I legitimately I think they were just throwing it in there because they could.
it
Honest to
was
God,
stupid.
it just.
Even because they could, it was dumb. It was like it just was bad writing. It was a moment of bad writing, and an otherwise
What do you think about
one of
putting adult jokes in cartoons for kids, but the kids won't understand until like
that's
much years
fine
later?
because there's an audience for it. There's an audience. They're like making a joke to the background. This one's not a reference to the background because it still doesn't work if you know the context.
Okay,
It
never
doesn't
mind.
work if
We
you
can.
don't know the context really, and it doesn't work if you do know the context. It's just
Okay,
awkward.
I was trying to. I mean, I didn't. I guess this is a big deal. I guess I didn't realize it was a big deal, but I guess we can move on. Okay.
No, you just dug in like really hard for that, and like
I just like I don't think it really means anything. I really don't think it was meant to do anything. It was just there.
even if it didn't mean anything, it's bad writing. It's just not. It's I think so much of this episode. This is like one of the, in my opinion, top three, if not the top best crafted episodes of anything that we've watched, and it's just a disappointing moment in something that seems masterful otherwise.
I mean, I guess. Never mind. I'm not gonna say anymore. We can move on.
So Soren falls asleep with Rayla. Like she talks and talks and talks, and he doesn't. As far as we know, he doesn't. He stops answering. He falls asleep. He's drooling. She says, "You're so gross," in a way that shows that it's cute, which is classic Rayla, to be prickly on the outside but a softie on the inside. And I love that about her character. She looks a lot older now, and I appreciate that because Soren looks a little bit older, but she looks like a woman now. Like she looks established, and I enjoy that very much about her. Are you
I'm still here.
okay? Sorry, all my screens. I have three monitors, and they all suddenly went black for a second. So I was worried that my computer was restarting or something.
Wow. Sorry. No, I had to get that in there. No one will get that, but I just had to get that in there.
What? Oh,
Never mind. Don't just move on. That was a forced joke that no one will get. We'll just move on.
okay. So that being said, I do think that this episode, in ways that I greatly appreciate, have tremendous attention to detail, and I didn't see it until some of it until the second playthrough. But that's why another reason why, like when I'm rewarded so heartily for attention to detail at one point, and I see like something that like is a detail that's just such a disruption, that's when it like gets even more frustrating for me because I'm like you've indicated to me that you want me to pay attention to detail, and then you put in a detail that makes absolutely no sense like to put in.
I feel like
it's
this irritate. No, I'm just let you continue, but I feel like I guess depending on the show, irritation can be done differently. I honestly, I didn't really get irritated by that earlier, which is probably why I was saying this it's such a big deal. Because I've watched shows before that are well crafted, whatever, but they still throw in stupid things because they can. I don't feel like a writer, because I like to draw. I like making worlds, in fiction, whatever. Though I have never thought of throwing in a really random line like that, so maybe I shouldn't be making a comment on this.
okay.
But like I'm gonna make it anyway.
You may not realize how many like times people quote Shakespeare without having any idea that they're doing it. There's a lot of quotes that like don't really like. It's a one thing to quote something in context or even quote something just because it's become like day-to-day conversation. It's another to like really like take something wildly specific like that, move it into a context where it doesn't make sense, and then expect it to work. That's all.
I guess on the last thing. I'm gonna go back to Rayla. I feel like all he was trying to do was get to kiss her, which granted didn't work out because she literally decided to blow in his face or fart, whatever. It's just I just took it as a little gimmicky teenage love, whatever. But I understand you don't like it being placed here. You preferred something else that would have made sense or moved the plot along. I mean, that's I guess preference is key here. Everybody has a different preference for something in anything. Period. But I guess I'm just But that's a Rayla and Soren.
So now, Rayla and Soren talk, and Soren falls asleep, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The next thing that comes up is Ezra is talking with the baker, and he's expecting a prismatic shadow, and there's a little hand moment where he's like, "What's a chableau?" And he's like, "Well, it's complicated but simple." Blah 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 blah. And the what is the name of that blonde woman who is like second in command of the country? Do you know her name?
I don't know her name. Um, I'll see if I can't find it if they even say her name.
Oh yeah, she's been a fairly major. She's been a
She's
fairly
supposed to be his wife, Varen, right? Ex-wife.
no, she's sort of like more like a
I could have sworn she was supposed to be his. She was
leader
supposed to have
character.
been his wife at some point. I felt like that was said.
It's Opelli. Opelli, I believe. Yeah. So Opelli comes up, and I think she's a very interesting character, and I think she's going to become relevant later. She says, "I'm worried about something a little less fun and colorful," and she talks about how the people are upset that they're doing this on like a site where there was so much death. And this goes back to my comments about how Ezra has like this sort of idealism that not everybody shares. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute too. I also think it's interesting how Ezra's crown has like the left hand side is like taller than the right hand side. And I noticed that it's also reflected in the design on the throne. I don't know if that means anything to me, but I keep chewing on it when I see that his left and right are so different.
No, I'm listening. I'm just
Could
looking.
just
I'm just looking into
That's one of
something.
those cases where it could just be a design, but like when there's so many dualities in this show, and you've got like Claudia with the two different color hairs and stuff like that, it makes me want to think about that, like that there's some sort of level of equality, but I don't know why he would wear it on his head if it represents inequality. So it could just be nothing. It just could be a cool way to draw a crown, but I just don't know. It's a little deeper than I could get. Let me put it that way. I'm stopping because I thought I heard you trying to say something.
No, I would just say I don't. I was trying to look into something, but I already just disproved it. I don't know why I thought she was an ex-wife or whatever. I'm gonna move over
Oh,
that.
I didn't even get
I
into
was
it
looking
because I was
into it.
positive.
Hmm?
But she's sort of like the second in command. She's an advisor, but she's a highly respected advisor. And so far as I can tell, she's next in line after him.
But
Especially
they were
when,
trying to get her to take over when Varen was taking over. That's what they were trying to. I just read into that a little bit, but yeah.
right. So I was talking with my wife about this when we were watching this, and I suspected that things won't be the same when Ezra comes back. And she's and the two main reasons for this, and I'm still going to get into one later, but one of them is it's not that she's evil or plotting against Ezra. It's that I think she has loyalty to her country more than she has. Her loyalty to her country is stronger than her loyalty to Ezra. And I think that she has a lot of reservations about how he's been leading things. And that she said this in season 3, but I think she's not like a full out ready to rebel or anything like that, but I think she has very strong reservations about um, the childlike innocence of Ezra, and I think sometimes for her it comes across as naivete.
I guess I could
So
take.
he's
I'll continue.
go ahead. Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, to piggyback off of what you just said about, I guess, him being naive. Um, I will say that as I was watching this episode and he was having that speech with the queen, and as everything was happening over at at the queen's home, which you'll get to that eventually. But as I was hearing him do that speech, it became quite clear to me that, like, I think you said before at some point that he's inherited Aang's will, and I said that as he was saying that speech, and what I continued with though to myself was like, it's kind of weird considering that both Aang and him are from different worlds, but they have the same idealistic, no violence. You know, I want a peaceful land. I want people to be happy. You know, I want people to be able to feel pain, but also move past it. And I hate to say it, but it's unrealistic, kind of, that to think, okay, somebody lost somebody. The the immediate human reaction is to grieve. For some people, grieving leads into some other activities. Bless you. Leads into some other activities in which we've already seen in this universe. Love and loss. I think they actually even say these exact words. You know, it's a cycle that just doesn't seem to stop. And he wants to stop this. I don't think it's really realistic to think you can stop it. At least not even right now, where the world is right now. Him bringing in the queen, I think, just it made things worse. As we know that as this episode was playing, I was like, oh lord, Ezra made a mistake. Um, a lot of things happened that probably could have actually been stopped if the queen had been at her home. But like, yeah, I believe yeah he is really naive, and it's gonna more likely backfire. Whether it's gonna evolve Opelli taking over, I have no idea. But
I
continue.
don't think. I'm not saying he's naive. But I'm not going to weigh in on that for the time being. I'm not saying he's naive, but I certainly think that Opella thinks that he's naive,
Well, I
and
will
I think she's
replace
supporting
naive.
him. Yeah,
I'll,
I think
I
she's support. Go ahead.
I think Ezra is not. I'm gonna replace naive with. I think he's a little bit too idealistic.
He's
He
awfully
has
idealistic.
this view of the world, and he doesn't want to break it. But continue.
Mhm. So anyway, so she takes him aside and she explains to him, people have been coming to me in confidence. So if you think about that too, think about Ezra's connection to the people. If they're coming to her in confidence and he's never heard of this, every single piece of person that wanted to speak to one of the leaders in confidence spoke to her and not Ezra. So if you're talking about who's got the finger on the pulse of the country and who's like seen as the one that you can go to for wisdom and advice, they're not going to Ezra, they're going to her. It's not that they don't listen to Ezra or respect Ezra, as we see later when Ezra's speaking to his people and they like are on board with it, but it seems like she is, when it comes time to lead, when it comes time to like be full of heart, they look at Ezra, but it looks like when it comes time for like a sensible leader, it looks like they're already kind of leaning on her instead. And that goes back to my thing about like Ezra's little like tea party kings meetings every day and how they're not like necessarily guiding the country. I think she's doing a brunt of the work behind the scenes, and this is just one example of where she's respecting him and she's not exactly like going against him. But when he leaves with the dragon and he leaves her in charge for what I'm guessing is going to be most of the rest of the season, I think he's going to come. I think it's possible. I'm not calling it as a definite, but I think it's possible that she leads her way while she's in charge.
I mean, I didn't think that. I didn't even the idea of him leaving the country to do something didn't even cross my mind. But then again, the way the episode ended, it's clear that also the elf wasn't done speaking. You know, with his last breath, they literally cut off after he says that that staff or like the fallen one is coming back. Which is an interesting
Yeah.
choice of words.
I mean, I doubt that. I don't see how they would stay in the country. Do you?
I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, honestly, I should have suspected. But I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just mostly like watching the episodes as they come. You know, I wasn't really thinking that far ahead. I guess it makes
The
sense
cat,
if they need to stop. If they need to stop whatever's going to happen, they can't do it from inside the country.
right? So the characters can't stay inside the country. They've got to go out. It's obvious to me that they've got to go out and get Claudia. They have to go out and deal with the problems in the world. If they do, and she doesn't come with them, which it makes no sense for her to, because she's a politician only. She doesn't have combat skills. She doesn't have anything to be useful for them. At least not more useful than her ability as a politician. Then she's just, when he leaves and the decisions are made up to her, even if she's like um sorry, even if she's trying to do things that are not inconsistent with Ezra, she has a very different perspective than him. So I'd be curious, depending on how long he leaves, how much that like how much the world will change when he comes back. So anyway, she takes him aside and says, "I'm concerned about it growing with the Valley of the Graves." And he's like, "What? It's a sacred, beautiful place." And he has no, like, he can't relate at all. The, it's just another example of his, like, he's having the dragon land in the exact place where all of the hatred and derision, like thoughts of hate and hatred and derision of the elves is probably strongest. And he sees a beautiful place, and she sees the pulse of the people and the history behind this and things like that. So it's a very, like, contrasting moment for their two leadership styles.
Uh, Here's the thing with that. I see where you're coming from, and I saw when I was watching the episode, but I could also
Mm-hmm.
see Ezra's point of view. Again, this is kind of where I guess naivete kind of comes into play a little bit. Not, but not really. What I see Soren as he's trying to, yeah, he might not understand the amount of loss that happened on that battlefield, because I'm pretty sure he wasn't there for a lot of that war. So obviously he wouldn't even understand the amount of loss that happened in that area. Um, but two, it's I feel like he's like, again, it's that whole, he has his ideal situation in his mind, but unfortunately because he is so young and he is so unexperienced, he can't, you know, this is the best way he can. You know, if he's trying to do his best to figure out a way to solve this issue, and he's hoping, and this is probably where the issue is coming from. It's like, versus dealing with the problem, which he already says that he's already ignored a lot of the dealing with the problem later on in his speech, but he's trying to throw a rug over it, which honestly is not a good idea. Again, playing to that whole Soren is not a, probably he isn't ready for the responsibility. He only took it when he did because he realized that his spot wasn't out there on the field with his brother. It was in the kingdom. But as you're also so pointing out here, at the very beginning of the season, we're already seeing that, like, what you expect the king to probably to be isn't exactly what Ezra is right now. And at some point, I feel like he'll probably have to grow into that position, but he isn't there or ready to grow into it yet. So maybe him leaving is probably the best, but what happens with that as soon as he leaves is probably another kettle of worms to deal with later.
Right. So there's a really, speaking to the tiny details that come up in this. The next thing that happens is the Queen Dragon lands, and there's a moment here that I think is really, really important, like symbolically, but that's really easy to miss. And the moment that I'm talking about is right around 742. The dragons land, and there's this general sense of awe and fear by everybody. And it's funny that you brought up the three screens going black earlier, because racism, which is being tackled very delicately in this, in my opinion, by racism, which is being tackled very delicately by, like, literally like speciesism instead. Do you know what I mean? Like prejudice against, like, nobody in this world seems racist, but they are speciest. Like the sentient creatures, it's revolutionary for a human and an elf to spend time together, for example. But there's a really interesting moment here that demonstrates how racism is taught. And if you look, like, it's a taught behavior, like, and how children don't understand it, like they have to be taught racism. And if you watch starting around like 743 or so, you're going to see that when the Queen Dragon comes down, a little boy laughs seeing the dragon because he's just thrilled to see it. And the parent grabs the kid and pulls him back, like, and he looks at him like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be afraid." And to me, that's such a significant detail, given what Ezra's trying to accomplish here and what ground he's trying to break. that the parents are both scared and stalwart, and then the kid is like, "Yay!" and the parent just jerks him backwards.
No, I mean I got all that. I mean I really didn't pay much attention. I did see it. It just didn't register in my brain. But I mean that makes sense. I guess at the
It's the
same time,
moment,
the
like,
dragons are the most dangerous thing in that world, though.
yeah, I know, but what I'm saying though is like, dangerous or not, at 8:09, when that boy, you see, they showed the boy twice, so it's not like just a passing thing. Earlier, the time signature I said a moment ago, he's laughing and cheering, and the dragon lands, and he continues to laugh and cheer, and the parent pulls him back. And to me, that's the moment. If you pause at 8:11, I think it is. If you pause at 8:11, you'll see the moment where he looks back at his parent, and he's like, "Wait, I'm supposed to be scared of this?" And I think it's really, really poignant that they did that as like just a small detail on like the attitude of this, and that he's being taught that this is dangerous and to be afraid, when his instinct says to celebrate it and welcome it. And I mean, they even have like a black and white couple there. Like the mother is black and the father is white, and the kid is mixed. So that even like that doesn't seem like an accident either.
No, I mean I know everything there was purposeful. I'm just saying that I understand. I understood what you meant about the little kid being. I was just saying that you could also go the other way with that, saying the dragons themselves, can be seen as a threat because they have power and the humans don't. Again, it doesn't really make the speciesism, you know, it doesn't make the speciesism right. It kind of makes sense, kind of. But again, yeah,
They've
this
killed
is.
an awful lot of dragons.
Hmm?
They've killed an awful lot of dragons, including the one that's more powerful than the queen. Just saying.
But I think that was when they were using dark magic. I mean, I'm just saying that like the fear can be seen because some of those humans, I'm pretty sure a lot of the humans that were in that field probably don't have the ability to attack a dragon, or probably wouldn't try attacking a dragon. Now, the people the people in the armor probably, but the people not in the armor, I'm pretty sure not.
Okay.
And she came down
So
with lightning. just want to
yeah,
put
he
that.
did, but it was like tingly and fun, and you see lightning when Zim's licking Ezra too. Um, it just struck me as I don't know. It just struck me as like a really good little detail that they built into this that I thought was like really worthwhile and poignant and like valuable. You know what I mean? Even though they just sort of toss it in there, and I was like, wow, that's so good.
No,
So
I agree with you. I was just saying that as well. But continue.
mhm. So they move forward to Claudia trying to get into the dragon's den. Of course, she's able to walk right in without any problem right now. And she sort of half through cleverness and half through an accident finds the lower chamber of the area. She heads down there. One thing that I think is fun. Did you ever watch Justice League with Unlimited with Zatanna?
Yeah.
Remember Zatanna? All her spells were like English words just said backwards.
I mean, I wasn't. I was trying to figure this out for episodes if that was what was happening there. But I guess it makes sense that her spells would just be in backwards in whatever
So
language.
I found a list that translates them. I'm not trying to look at it too closely because it's every spell ever cast, so it's going to tell me things that I'm not supposed to see. But what I find really interesting about it is the natural spells cast by the Earth and Soren are all sort of Latin based. They're based around Latin, and they're you can look up the Latin words to them and find the etymology and know that like it's actually Latin. So like let's take Sky Magic because that's the one he does the most. Um, Augustius Latius translates in Latin to trouble cleaner. Another one translates in Latin to ancient secret. So you could put Aspero derives from the Latin word aspero, which means I breathe. and can be read as I breathe wind. So like his spells, their spells are all like old and full and based on Latin. But when you cast black magic, it's the only one that does this. The black magic is reversed, almost like it's not natural and twisted. And I like the symbolism of that, that like all the natural spells have like a completely different format for being used, that they're based on a real ancient language, and black magic is just this like um natural twisting. So anyway, I think that's really cool.
You know, I'm actually confused about now you said that, and it's just like it is brought into it is brought into focus something about that's something that doesn't make up sense about Soren. Um, okay, humans can't use magic, and that's to say about the mythical beings of Zadia that humans just can't unless they're
Humans
drawing.
were thought not to use the magic, but we know at least Soren can.
That's what I was saying. Humans, I think this it was stated at some point humans can't use magic or something like that. Are they unable to draw upon the powers that require that? But we now know that's not 100% true because we have Soren using magic, and he learned to tap into it somehow. So I
Do we know
wonder.
who Soren's parents are? He's not like part elf or something, is he?
No, I mean he shares a parent with Ezra, but I forgot which. I think it's the mother.
Yeah.
I think his father's different. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've given up on the whole him being half elf thing because I feel like we would have seen it at some point.
Oh, I didn't say half elf. I said part elf. Like if we're gonna find out later that there was an elf like 6 generations back or something. But anyway, so she finds the lair down. She finds the lair downstairs, and I finally, like, as she was walking through, that's when I started checking, because one of the spells she casts underground is Sigum Roy Laver or something like that, but reversed it's Reveal Your Magic, and that's why it glows. Because she's saying, like, backwards, she's saying Reveal Your Magic and, like, identifying, like, that magic specifically. So now they're starting to do you know what juxtaposition means? Or do you know what
I looked it up
juxtaposition?
once and forgot. Split it to me like I'm five. We'll just go with that.
Okay. It's to contrast things, to put things that are greatly different next to each other, to bring insights about how they're different together.
Okay.
So if you were to put an old dying man holding a baby or something like that, and you were trying to bring some insight about the human condition, that would be like you juxtapose the baby and the old man to bring insight by the way that they contrast. So what they do for pretty much the rest of the episode is juxtapose the world that Ezra's created with the world that Claudia and Viren are helping to create. And they're juxtaposing it very, very heavily, but it starts at this moment where Claudia starts walking downstairs. And even to the point where like she's walking in a downward spiral, and Ezra's walking upstairs to the pinnacle, to the pinnacle, like, of the thing, like the podium, to speak to people. And the air wizard that they bring later also walks upstairs to send his message as he's passing away. The good characters in the rest of for the rest of this episode spend their time going up, while the evil characters spend their time going downwards. So Ezra has a series of awkward situations happen as he's trying to make this work. So first, Soren doesn't appear, and I spoke with my wife about this for a while, and we think that Soren didn't appear. It doesn't seem to me like it'd be like Soren to sleep in. Like, we've never seen him late or miss out on a responsibility. Soren has always been pretty much on time and responsible for everything. And Soren is late here, and I think he's late because of the release of stress by Rayla returning. Like he's gotten something back from that, and I think he's kind of like sleeping it off. So he sleeps peacefully when Rayla leaves. Rayla talks him to sleep, and he sleeps peacefully. He doesn't sleep fitfully and wake up throughout the night. He sleeps so peacefully that he sleeps in. But one way or the other, however you'd want to interpret that, he's not in time. So of all things, they put Soren up to make some jokes, and Soren makes a few really lame jokes. And then finally his last joke, for some reason, like, it doesn't look like condescension. It looks like the Dragon Queen actually thinks it's funny. But the first few are just a complete flop. And not even like the humans are laughing. They're all staring at him like, what are you doing? And then they bring out, you see him drooling again, even though he's been cleaned, and Bait trying to wake him up because Bait knows that it's time, because Bait's an actual relevant character. And his opinion about things matters, and he wakes him up. And Soren grabs the Dragon Balls as fast as he can and flies out with his air magic to see what's going on, to like see if he can make it. Meanwhile, things are starting to go a little bit well, and they reveal the pastry that the bakers made. And Soren is jumbling out his Dragon Balls, and they all roll down.
His name is Callum, by the way.
I'm sorry, Callum. The wizard is Callum, I'm sorry. So Callum, I've been calling him Soren through the whole thing. Callum pulls out his Dragon Balls and gathers them and casts the spell, and they rocket directly into the croissant. And the croissant explodes, and there's another really awkward moment, and the Dragon Queen says, "This is the best jelly in all of the world." And everybody's relieved. And then, so we have that moment, you know what I mean, of lightness and literally like a rainbow crossing the sky. And then we cut right back to Claudia, whose hair is black and white. And there's an unnatural green glow to the fire, and it's filled with gold and just innumerable treasures and things of probably great historic value. And I find a really interesting moment here where she finds a red pendant. And I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I'll stop in a second. She finds a red pendant with like a rune on it. And she says, "Oh, I have some cute dangly earrings that would go with you." And that made me realize that her current earrings are not matching. So if you're to look, I'll throw a screenshot in chat where somebody illustrated it. The one on the left is like a purplish pinkish eye, magenta eye in a gold circlet. And it sort of looks like it sort of reminded me of the gemstone at the top of the staff she's trying to steal. On the other side of her head, where the black hair is, I know in that picture both sides are black, the white side shows that eye. And at first I was wondering if that eye was like the Eye of Avaros or something like that. And it doesn't not track if that staff also belonged to him, because it's got that eye on it too. The other eye, the other side of her head, the black side, which represents the good in her, has 3 piercings. It has 2 dots at the top and then like a golden leaf. So when she said, "I have some cute dangly earrings that would go with you," it's really weird to me because I realized that she's been wearing those earrings throughout the whole series, and I just never noticed it. And she actually like looks at the pendant with her reflection when she says it, and you can see one of her earrings in the reflection. So I thought that was really strange. And it's the only thing she steals, like, other than what she came there for. It's the only thing she steals for herself. So let me stop and let you catch up with me. I'm sorry. She also has an armband on, but I can't make a lot out of that armband. It's just 2 serpents.
Well, I mean, I don't really have much to say. I'm gonna let you go back to it, but I was like, I want to. You sound like you're not sure that the staff belongs to Eros. I'm almost certain it does, and I am only certain because of something the Sky Elf says directly to her when she's trying to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I won't let you return it to its true owner. That is not talking about Varen.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you. Um, her equipment in general is weird too, because her staff looks kind of like a witch doctor staff with a feather and the skull on it. So I completely agree with you. Given what you said, I agree that that's his staff. So that's the staff is potentially the second or third thing that Erebos owns, because we know the mirror was connected to him, and then we have the earring that may or may not have some direct connection to him.
I guess one last thing about the staff. I will say when he first mentioned that, I was very confused. Like, you don't want to return it to Viren? Why? And then it dawned on me, like, you would be fighting her so badly if it was Viren, because Viren right now can't really pose that much of a threat to the world, and I'm pretty sure he thinks Viren's dead. So he shouldn't have any real reason to really be afraid of her taking that staff. It is quite possible that he probably senses some impending doom with that staff.
Well, he's an elf too, so he could potentially be very old.
That is also true.
He at least is speaking to the dragons, who are sure are very old, and the queen is the last. As the queen would be the oldest one, right? I mean, because dragons get larger with age.
I guess, I mean, depends on how the other dragons were, but yeah, she would probably be the oldest living entity as of late. If we're not counting Erebos, however old he is.
Yeah. So if he's hanging out with her, he would have a lot of ancient knowledge, and there's certainly a lot of history down in that stash down there that he knows exists, because he's down there and he immediately recognizes the staff. So he must have at least some idea of the inventory down there. So then they have a wonderful painting made for the queen, and the painting's got a hole in it. And this is the point. I've been saving something to say for a little bit. The visit with the queen wants it to work, and she's doing everything in her power for it to work. But this is where I feel like Ezra's vital role in the country to move forward his idealism is proven to be not very possible without Ezra there. Because the queen would have the queen wants this to work, and I don't feel like the queen would have left on bad terms. But it's pretty much Ezra's relationship with the queen that got her down there in the first place, and Ezra's relationship, I think, with the queen that maintains it, because he can apologize on behalf of the people that have done things wrong or made mistakes, things like that. But his speech to his people, no other character in the series could have made something like that happen. I think that Ezra is irreplaceable as a leader. So if he leaves, which they've got to leave the kingdom at some point, if he leaves, then I don't see how his sense of idealism and truth is going to get forward to these people, because he's sort of a teacher to them in that sense, and a symbol and a role model and a driving force. And there's not a whole lot of people right now that are, at least that are in power, or even the general masses, that are currently on the same page as him. And you see here that he stands before them and he gives them this incredible speech, and the incredible speech changes a lot of hearts. But at the same time, you're seeing this incredible juxtaposition where there's elf and human and the darkest form, but also sort of elf and human, like symbolizing both forms, her being half dark and half light still, with her thing. And they're doing battle at the same time that Ezra's speech is going on, and to the point where while they're doing the speech, they put Ezra in the room to further juxtapose what's happening. And it's just amazing. And the battle is very vicious and bitter, but not necessarily story building. They're just struggling over the staff, struggling over the power. I'm just really taken by it. And one of them is selfless, and the other one is selfless in her way because she's trying to save her father. And she's trying to save someone, and he's reluctant to murder her. And I think he has several chances to have murdered her if that was his goal, because he freezes her form and he has her like incapacitated and things like that. And I feel like at one finally he says like, I'm not a murderer, but I can't let you do this. But the speech he gives to the people is just unbelievably good. Like it's very deep and inspiring. And he starts by putting his hand on the sword because Soren was going to kind of ruin it all and be like, do you know how powerful this guy is? Blah, 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 blah. And Ezra's like, wait, this isn't about power. This is about love and healing. You know, because Soren's like, here, her face can bite you in two. Come on, cowards. And he moves them to like fight him. And like Ezra's once again, he's like making the peace. And you see Soren's face change and his whole attitude change. And you also see how much Soren has grown in this moment. Um, you know, from Claudia's kind of like henchman and Viren's kind of second right hand man into like somebody whose noble heart has really been brought out and changed by proximity to Ezra. And Ezra, for his credit, becomes a little wiser in the moment too and says that, you know, anger is definitely a part of this and I'm angry too. And he has to come to terms with that. But he still speaks with the tone of a love. Like he's like, I'm angry too. My dad was killed. My mom was taken from me before I could remember her. But and I feel this anger, but we can't embrace it. We can't move forward with it. We want peace, we want love, and violence tests us and twists us. And I mean, even there, right there, with the twisted way it converts us to its cause, like you can see how tempting it is for people to get violent about this, like ripping the hole in the dragon's head and Soren like reaching for his sword and things like that. And the temptation comes out even more strongly as Aang's speaking to those that can't hear him when he's put in that room kind of as a specter during their battle. And Claudia's boyfriend, the elf, is like, I'm not a killer, but I've got to kill you. And Claudia's boyfriend, who has never killed anyone before, drives himself to kill too. And you can see how this anger and violence like feeds on itself and draws people to its own purpose. And I think that's going to be what the whole storyline is about when Averos comes out, is his puppet mastery of taking people's true nature and using violence to twist them to his cause, because that's what's exactly what's happening here anyway. Like Claudia's fighting and killing and ruining herself out of love, you know, and that's why I think the animators can't quite draw her whole head black, because as long as she's doing this in the name of love, like the evil things that she's doing can't be all evil. And we've seen that Soren is changeable, and maybe Claudia is too to some extent with that. But she can't see it right now, and for the time being, the powers of good failed. And Claudia was defeated, but he was killed by his own type in backstabbing and violence that cycled through and got him there and became the descent of Claudia's boyfriend too, who realizes the horrible thing that he's done, but also doesn't change anything to do anything about it. So, and
Okay.
that song that they play, the song of love, and what was it? Song of love and what?
Oh, hate.
I think it was like the song of love and pain or something. A song of love and loss. And if you look at his violin when he's playing it, like there's a good glimpse of it at 2014, you'll see that the violin sort of looks, the bottom of the violin sort of looks like a skull with two eyes and teeth. It's such an interesting weapon. Like it's such an, again, the attention to detail in this series is incredible. And if you look down at the violin or stringed instrument, whatever it is that he's playing, like it looks like a skull. Uh,
I don't really have anything to add other than I guess we can jump into this. Since this is all part of the entire ensemble of the fight that we had. As the Sky Elf was dying, um, in his last breath, literally, sends the message out to the Queen. And this is all happening. I guess we could say this is all everything that was happening with Claudia was happening at the same time. So that's or shoot, Ezra was having a speech. Um, Seems like Ezra was able to, quell the dissent real quick with his speech and his words. Again, showing he is capable of leading. Um, but right now, I don't think he's at a spot right now, which is probably what is going to probably lead him to leave, um, to do something outside the kingdom, and then take the experience he has outside the kingdom back into the kingdom. But we'll see. But as the
But
last,
check out as he uses his last breath and Ezra's um, speech. I mean, for a series that pays so much attention to the elements, as he's casting the spell with his last breath to bring warnings of war and betrayal, you see them lighting four fires, like almost like eternal flames. But it's also fires are extremely symbolic, and of course these fires are symbolic as well. But it's like Ezra lit a fire under them. Like he got them. He was able to implement change and really get people to think differently about what was going on with the beautiful music and the things like that. And Ezra saved the entire day from being an uncomfortable day with like a lot of awkward failures and turning it into something deep and inspiring. And then he brought that out, and then he was able to shift with the winds and change and come out with a speech right off the top of his head that was very different than what he planned. And the music that was planned for the day changed, and the tone was planned for the day had changed. And you see everybody gathered around in the gathering darkness, and four fires are lit. And the breath that he breathes out extinguishes those fires almost as soon as they're lit. It shows the damage that was done. That they made so much progress, and there was a fire lit underneath them. And the Queen speaks about how much that impacted her too, and how it was healing, and said somehow it made my grief feel less, and it felt like healing. And then almost immediately, the fires are blown out.
obviously something's gonna go down. Just off the words of the fallen. I forget exactly what it said, but it involved the star is about to be the fallen star is about to come back. Um,
Yeah.
Very targeted words, specifically towards the queen. Um,
Mhm.
no one else is gonna probably understand it but the queen and her servant. I'm pretty sure who probably knows what's going on too. Uh, Maybe not Zim, because Zim probably hasn't been there long enough to learn all that information. But when that happened, and also with the flame going on, it kind of like made a pit in my stomach. I was like, oh dear, this is not good. Because I was realizing what was happening as it was happening. It was like, I didn't realize it at the time in the last episode, but they were setting, when the queen left, everything was kind of being set in motion. Um,
Yeah.
Ezra accidentally, unknowingly helped Claudia. Claudia didn't know it, neither did Ezra, but now it's like, I wonder how the queen's going to take this. Because, as you said before, she said she was being healed. It wasn't like a full healing, but, she was feeling,
Yeah.
a little bit healed. I'm very concerned because this is big old dragon, and we definitely did see a taste of her power when she landed. Um, she's in
Hmm.
the middle of a city of a lot of people. Dragons can decimate cities really easily.
I mean,
So,
that smaller dragon's enough to take out this city.
that's
Never
true.
mind the big one.
Well, we just know they're powerful enough to do so. Like
Hmm.
there is, and then with the whole like picture that he had planned to give her with the head cut out, like there's like a lot of like, I don't know, like it's very
Fire.
scary, actually, very scary. That's basically all I can really say towards it.
So, but you're right. At the end of the scene, you see the warning of danger, and every candle and every torch is blown out, and the sigil is ended, and then you see the stars in the background as the voice comes in and says, "The fallen star has returned." So that's what I had to say about that episode. I think it was one of the most well constructed, beautiful episodes of anything that we've seen since we started doing these podcasts. And I had just was moved by the entire thing. And when I watched it the second time, I was so impressed with the attention to those little details that I've been bringing up throughout. And I don't know, it was just really, really impressive. So I've seen some episodes of things that were just as deep and had just as much attention to detail, like that one episode of Shaman King, for example. But I haven't seen something. It's just the music alone, the musical score alone is unbelievably good. So I think there was a lot of good things to say about that episode. And I know I just talked almost exclusively for an hour and a half, but I just wanted to throw all that out there. I had a lot of deep thoughts about that. So what do you think?
I have nothing to say.
Sorry.
I pretty much said what I wanted to say as I was getting them into your speech, but I was like, I had nothing more to say. It was
What?
definitely the beginning of a lot. That I guess is the best way to put this. This is the beginning of a lot. We're viewing episode 3. There's 9 episodes. We got 5, no 6 left, and they've already kind of knocked over the first domino. So I'm pretty sure things are gonna get serious from here. My take. I liked everything that was there. I mean, like, every character, said what they needed to say. I got a lot of messaging. I also got a lot of like situations that were just kind of set up to, play in some other characters' favors. I was really actually kind of shocked at like how I didn't really pick up on Ezra pretty much kind of like making it easy. I guess it really plays in that a whole Ezra is just like he's an idealist and he only wants to see the good in things versus seeing the full picture. Though that speech he did give kind of showed that he's capable of it. It's just that, he's more of a think with his. He wants to go in and do things versus like sitting back and planning and getting to the ultimate end. Because everything he's done so far has just been, I just want to be able to, move on. I want to be able to wipe the slate clean, but I don't think that's easy. I don't think you should be able to do that. You should be able to look at past failures and learn from it.
His ability to actually come through and impact the room, or in this case, the people that were gathered around, I think, and his ability to actually change people, like Soren, I think, I think that's kind of like what I'm getting at. Like, it's hard to call somebody that's an idealist naive if it works.
Well, I mean,
But I mean, like, he changed everybody in that field saw his wisdom, including the oldest dragon of them all. And I'm presuming that's the oldest dragon of them all. I don't like find this out in the next episode or something. But in almost every mythology I've ever seen, except for Lord of the Rings, the age of the dragon indicated its size. Lord of the Rings, there was some ups and downs. But I mean, certainly one of the wisest of the dragons, and it's an ancient creature. Even saw his wisdom. So it's hard when his words change people and change things and make and really earn his respect to call him naive. But I think he's like from my perspective, but I think he's seen as naive by at least that one woman and possibly many of the others. And he hasn't gotten through to everybody yet. And he hasn't had time to. And if he was removed right now, for whatever reason, I don't feel like there's anybody else that can do what he can do. And I think that's one of the biggest things that gathering was about his indispensability. That without him, that there's nothing would have happened the way it happened that day. And you see him trying to lay the give them the chance to have their own independence. You know what I mean? You make the strudel, you do the comedy, you do the light show, you do the painting. He had it all planned out where he was going to speak at the end, but he wanted everybody else to kind of go with him. And everybody except, what the heck is his name? The African American, well, not the African American, the guard at the end that plays the music, the black guard at the end that plays the music. I forget what his name is, and I've looked it up before, but it's in my notes. But other than him, everybody there kind of let him down, and there's a sense, and he wasn't doing something that he was there to do. You know what I mean? He changed what he was supposed to do based on inspiration from Ezra too. So it's hard to say that even that would have happened without Ezra's inspiration.
I get it, but at the same time, I guess it's like he I understand what he's trying to do. I understand what he wants to do. I just feel like maybe he's kind of going at it a little bit too fast. Like he's trying to. Sorry, yeah, he can change people just by speaking to them. That's for sure. But not everybody will is receptive to ideological chatter. Sometimes people need to see action put in words, and maybe him leaving is a good way to do that. But then again, who knows? Like I mean, like you said before, he was there. He managed to tame the pitchforks. His speech actually charged a lot of people to see if they can't make this work. Melding both the worlds, getting rid of the divide that was created. Um, that was created at some point a long, long time ago, way before he was born, and these people that were born. But I guess if there's no more to say on Dragon Prince, maybe we should really move on to My Hero and then
Yeah.
move on to the
The only thing I'm
ending.
going to throw in there is that guard's name is Corvus, by the way. It was important. I need to get his name out there.
Corvus, got it.
Yeah. So yes, we can go on to My Hero Academia. I don't have nearly as much to say about that. I had a blast watching it, and it was a great episode. But like, why don't we have you lead since I just talked for forever?
I
I'm
didn't feel
sorry.
bad. Jeez.
Yeah, I feel bad that I just dominated the podcast for so long, but I just
That's fine.
really had a
I
lot in my
enjoy
mind about that
sitting.
episode. I was deeply touched by that episode and what it meant and the messages in it. And I don't know. I just had a lot to say.
But I guess basically what I really want to talk about here on My Hero is specifically you bring up character moments, and I want to say that but first the episode was really good. Everything leading from Chigaraki's struggle with Deku beating him, well, not beating him to a pulp, but pretty much him using him as a ping pong as a what are those things, like ping pong paddle or whatever, the thing that had the ball at the end of the string, and him just constantly bringing him back and forth, punching him. Paddleball. It was actually really interesting. It was like it was an interesting use of Black Whip that I wasn't thinking of, and also the other interesting uses that Deku was using his damaged arm as just where the Black Whip was coming from, eventually essentially making his bruised arm or damaged arm useful even after he blows it up.
Mm-hmm.
That fight, everything, Bakugo, which is kind of the topic I want to actually end this podcast on, but Bakugo taking a hit and essentially taking a like his character changing is probably like this entire series has been like character moments and just character situations in people and world situations just happening to everybody and seeing characters react to him. Bakugo has been an interesting character to follow um from the very beginning, and this episode I feel like was like a perfect like beginning for him. Well, I mean, the episode's literally called Bakugo Rise. They usually use that for any character that's going through a traumatic change in their life, whether that be traumatic or just them changing a lot. We see Bakugo like we see him go through this really weird journey from this punk kid who believed his own height to to this guy, this person who's trying to change, albeit in his own way, and not doing a lot, to right now where we're seeing after him realizing, I guess I'm going too fast, but like you see him go for a punk kid, trying to figure out what in the world, like why does Deku at all see him as a friend? That was very confusing and almost him like, um, what's the word I'm looking for? That syndrome where you always go back to your abuser. But
Stockholm.
yeah, Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
to finding out a lot more of like his background or his history with Deku. And as I guess a little bit of a side note, as Deku was like hammering into Shigaraki in that episode, we see like, I was like, as we were seeing, there was like very long segments of us looking at Bakugo just staring at this fight as it was happening, and I was like, call back to Vegeta and Goku. But a thing I was very shocked by was like, it's almost like that scene of Vegeta always seeing Goku being the one to beat up the bad guy, and just sitting there watching as it's happening. But it was almost different. Like I want to say, like Bakugo has history with Deku when they were growing up. Vegeta didn't. Vegeta had to learn essentially everything about Goku from a personality level because Goku was fully grown by the time those two met. Bakugo grew up with Deku and has like already learned a lot of Deku's personality quirks. Haha. Um, it was kind of interesting to see him talking with All Might as Deku was learning how to control float. Which he actually debuts here. Um, but it was interesting to see him talking to All Might and him learning a little bit more about All for One, or what All Might was planning, or what he was doing there, only to have All Might kind of reveal something that was like, I guess it makes the whole relationship between Deku and Bakugo make a lot more sense. He just pretty much comes out with it saying that like as they were kids, he just didn't understand why Deku had always been selfless, dangerously selfless, to a fault, to the point where he almost didn't care about what was going to happen to him. And we see this happening in his fight with Shigaraki as well, that Deku doesn't care what's going to happen to him. He wants to take out the bad guy. It seems like, it just seems kind of interesting that Bakugo, it seems like Bakugo, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but it kind of makes me think it's like maybe Bakugo does care about Deku, and it's just like it's in its own way. He isn't gonna like coddle him or whatever, but at the same time, it's like he is worried, he is concerned. It's just that he doesn't want to show it for whatever reason to Deku, and Deku kind of knows this at the same time, but it's not something he addresses. I only say this because like Bakugo goes out of his way to take a hit for Deku at the end of the episode, and it's like to me it's like the most shocking thing to see him do, because to me it's not within his character to be selfless for somebody else. He wants to be a hero, but we see that he wants to be the guy that wins.
Let's go back to what I've been saying all along throughout the entire series, that what makes Deku heroic is that he changes the people around him. I think it took him. I think Bakugo is so wrapped up with himself as a young person, not necessarily even a quarter of the way through the series, but as a young person, I think he was so wrapped up with himself, and his people basically worshiping him, you know what I mean, and being a big fish in a little pond and everything. But he hadn't really fully noticed Deku until Deku worked so hard to save him from the slime monster. And then he's like, wait, what's going on here? Like, I've seen this before, but not like this, because he'd seen him the other time he tried to save him when he was younger. But then he got his attention again when it turned out he had a power, and that the power might be better than his. And then that once he got his attention, I think Deku started changing him, just like he's changed everybody that has met him. Even Aizawa, like you have a little flashback, either this episode or the previous one, where Aizawa like reflects on what a hero he is, and you see the lock guy says it too. He says they're just boys, and he goes, "No, what am I saying? Like I've seen him. I've been seeing him as a hero all along." and you see that with Stain. You see that with a lot of people, both enemies and friends, that he just changes them. He inspires and he brings out the most in them. And I feel like that's what's going on here. Like that. It's just one more example of. I don't want to make it about Deku, but there's a big part of it that's about Deku, I think.
Before I continue, I want to say you said that scene where he recognized him as a hero. I think that was Bakugo's voice that you heard, because Deadlock's voice when he speaks, I know it could just be in his mind, and for whatever reason the voice actor just slipped there. I had no idea what happened, but I went back and looked at it a couple of times. It sounded like it was Bakugo that said that line, and Deadlock just said okay. Now I could be wrong.
It's around 1925, and Bakugo is not even talking at that point, and Endeavor says, "Take care of Aizawa and the others," and he says, "Too late for that kind of thinking. I recognized Deku as a hero a long time ago." And then he says, "Right, leave them to me." So what's the line right before that then? Is it Endeavor saying that? It's not Bakugo saying that. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Endeavor will use my heat to get us in the air. Todoroki, you keep cooling Endeavor as long as possible.
So the voice is obviously different. It's not Deadlock.
And then Endeavor asks if he wants him to shoot him, and he says, "You got it." And then Deadlock says, "They're just kids." And then somebody else says back to him, "Take care of Mr. Aizawa and the others."
But then out of nowhere, I recognized Deku as a hero a long time ago, and I thought it was Deadlock at first. But then when I went to go and listen to the voice, it doesn't sound like Deadlock's voice. Because usually, even if you're talking,
do you mind if I play a couple seconds of sound so we can hear it?
and I'm actually listening to it and I was about to listen to it right now because it doesn't sound like Deadlock. I don't know if you can hear it. I mean, I got you recording, so you want to try, you can.
I didn't want to mess up. I know you're very worried about copyright strikes, but I didn't want to mess you up. No,
that doesn't sound like Deadlock. The voice that comes before it.
Huh? I don't know. I think that's Deadlock, but I'm not positive.
But Deadlock actually speaks there, and it's like the voice just sounds like different. Like to me, it sounds like Bakugo and that whole gruff thing he has going on with his voice. Deadlock doesn't have that.
You're right, and we don't see lip flaps going, so it's definitely up for debate. With the visual evidence being in your favor. So I don't, but it could just have easily been him thinking that in his head.
Oh, I mean, I also it could have just been the voice actor slipping, but at the same time, it's just like, it doesn't sound like, I don't think I've ever heard Deadlock speak in a gruff like that, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah. But I mean, bigger than that is that Deku changes people. Deku even changed All Might. He first thing he said to him was like, "You can't be a hero," and then Deku shows his heroic side and he goes, "Okay, you can be a hero. In fact, I'm giving you my power." It's just the way he is. Deku like inspires and changes people and brings the best out of not the best, the most good out of people. And I think that's really obvious, So I think that part of this is that Bakugo, like he pulled Bakugo's attention away from himself and kind of snapped him out of it. And then Bakugo has been humbled by a combination of that and also like being around people that can kind of keep up with him. Not all of them, like he's still top tier hero, but people that can, people that are his peers or better, especially the pro heroes. And I think that has made Bakugo a better person.
Yes, but I also think there's a little bit more in it because, like,
guilt.
I don't. Well, I mean, yeah, there's guilt in there, but I think there's more than that in terms of like, Bakugo does explain in his interactions with Deku. He, one of the reasons why he bullied him, which is never a good reason, by the way, is actually how bullying starts, is that he was terrified of Deku's just selflessness to the point where it didn't make sense to him. Like a lot of what Deku did, which I guess is another thing, it kind of feeds in that whole, I think Deku was always like this, or he, it just took a power to be able to really emphasize it. I think I said this like years ago, I believe. It's like I think Deku's always been just this crazy guy who just didn't have any way to express it. Now he's able to. The detriment to his body. And it's kind of interesting too, it's like as Deku is like pummeling Shigaraki, and we getting glimpses of like a doctor telling him that if you keep doing this, you're not gonna, if you do like 3 or 4 more blows, you're not gonna be able to use your arms again for the rest of your life. And it's like you have Bakugo over here who probably wasn't even aware of that diagnosis, but we see that he's also he's also like kind of corroborating that whole thing with Deku just doesn't seem to care about himself. With just like everything he's been doing, he's raced to save Bakugo out of, from a villain that he had no way to stop. He's like saved him like, several times. Bakugo at this point, I guess like you said, he had to get humbled by Deku being around him after having to be around him for a long period of time. We realized that this is just how he is, and realizing this essentially realizes that he had to focus on himself and get better from that regard. Similar to the point that the episode freaking ends as Deku's about to die from a all for one possessed Shigaraki. I assume that's what happened there, because as he's being pummeled, well, as Endeavor is burning him to death, that was, I guess, cathartic kind of.
Well, except that it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, it was working until All for One took over. Then it stopped working. But at least that's what I believe is what that is meant to, all his hand coming out of the darkness and then the TV turning off, and then all of a sudden he's different. And I don't know that's visually that's meant for us to see, or
well, he shows better, so he's obviously different.
Did he say that?
Doesn't he say something like that? What does he say? He says something really spooky.
Well, I mean, as he's possessed, he says "my little brother," but like he said that when Shigaraki was normal looking. So I was just trying to figure if that whole look was just like for us to see, and they don't see that, or they see that. I'm guessing they can see it, so we'll just go with that. So otherwise, they did not.
Well, the hand comes out and is like, "Hey, let me take over," and he's like, "All right."
Yeah, but I thought the look like it was his mind, and I didn't think it was going to result in a physical transformation. But who knows? I guess another thing to actually point out too is that Deku makes a comment. So talking about Deku here, as he's fighting him before he starts laying into him, he makes note that Shigaraki, had a huge scar on his body, and Shigaraki even brings up the fact that his body isn't like limitless. And like his body has a limit now to like how much power he can exert. Deku makes the comment like he's just like me, and essentially this allows Deku to try to take advantage of it. I thought it was actually kind of interesting that there is a limit imposed on Shigaraki now, because he didn't stay in the pod for the actual maximum amount of time.
Wasn't he? He was in there for 3 months instead of 4, I believe.
Whatever it was, it wasn't the maximum amount of time he needed to be in there.
So, I mean, sort of, in a way, he's 75% max.
I mean, whatever the time was, I mean, like, it was kind of already stated several times throughout that, he wasn't incubated, the right amount of time. We just didn't know what that meant until now. So, it was interesting that, Deku pointed that out. It's like, oh, he's just like, bless you, he's just like me. He was acting well into him.
Right.
That's not what he said, but I mean, that's kind of like what I took. As the episode essentially ends, it's like Bakugo, essentially we have him repeat the exact words that Deku says, I moved without thinking.
Episode, do you ever watch the old MTV show, The Max?
No, why?
There's a demon in there. There was 2 demons, and one was like really hardcore looking, and the other one was like kind of like small and weak, but he could regenerate and like endure things. And the little weak one like looks at the other one. And he goes, "You can't kill me." And the other one goes, "Yeah, but I can kick your ass."
Wow.
I feel like that's the. I feel like that's like the relationship between Deku and um. The hell's his name? Why can't I think of it? White haired dude. Is the main
Shigaraki?
enemy.
Tomura?
Thank you. Yeah, Shigaraki. It's him. Deku can't kill him, but he can kick his ass because even now with his regenerative power, they're being really ambiguous about it because Shigaraki says, "Oh, I can't regenerate anymore," but that's not true because he's certainly regenerating. Um, but the observation that was made was like Deku, even though he's doing more damage here, it's another Pyrrhic victory, like I'd mentioned last time, that he might win like the short term, but like he's losing too much in the long term to win the whole war. Which is why they come up and burn him. But even that's not holding him back. Like he's still very close to fully ascended. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take that out of your hands. Go ahead.
Where was I? Oh, I'm just like, I guess I was ending on like if ultimately all the moments that Bakugo have been a part of has culminated into pretty much Bakugo just moving about thinking, trying to save somebody, regardless of whoever it was. And it seemed like he was very, as he was watching this fight, he was having a hard time getting involved with Deku's fight with Shigaraki. But he got involved at the last minute and pretty much took like 5 stabs, like one to each of his appendages and his stomach. I don't think they're gonna kill him, but I don't know what to show anymore.
It's just injuries don't have realistic consequences in the show. I mean, think about how much Shigaraki's taken, or Hawks having his wings destroyed and being covered in blood. Aizawa cutting one of his legs off and nobody's cauterized the wound or anything. He's just okay for the
Well, they're
most part.
working on it. I mean, I don't think
They're
anybody.
working on it, but I mean, like, how much field dressing do you do with what you have on hand in a situation like that before, you know what I mean, before a leg
Well,
cut
Endeavor
off?
couldn't help because he had to literally have his son uh, give him ice just to cool himself off for a few seconds.
Yeah, Endeavor's like at his limit. So it's just we've seen some pretty massacre grade like injuries happen to people, and I feel like with that in mind, I think Bakugo could be okay. I think I'm more worried about Deku losing use of his arms.
He said this all the time that the next injury he was going to take was going to make his arms go. The doctors are giving estimates at this point. Now I believe the doctors because of how bad his arms look right now, but he's the main character. They'll probably figure some way out.
What are they going to do? Give him like a regeneration quirk? Like what can they do?
It's possible there's a quirk inside of one for all we don't know about that can regenerate.
Yeah, we've got like 3 quirks left that we don't know about. So yeah.
I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying that it's a possibility. We have this powerful quirk in his body that can. We still know all the abilities yet.
Even if he doesn't, the weird thing is like even if he loses his arms, like use of his arms, which I don't think they're going to be like limp at his side or cut off or anything. I think he's going to be able to move them a little bit. But like Black Whip kind of supplements.
I was saying Black Whip at this point is like it gives his useless arm something to do. Because before
he basically is like Doc Ock at that point.
I mean, he's using his quirk Black Whip really freaking well here. Like it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it shows that they've been training it specifically. He's been working with the tape guy, and he's been working on floating, and he's been working. You know what I mean? I think the real game changer here is that Frappy trained him.
I knew this was gonna come up, just didn't know when. Okay, well,
I mean that's the one. It's like It's like when Goku goes to King Kai's planet, and King Kai says, "1 day of training here is like 100 years of training somewhere else." I mean, that's basically what he did with Froppy.
Moving on. I guess ultimately this episode was really good. Everything I would say, everything that happened in this episode was really great. We saw a lot of casualties. I guess I'll also bring up. I didn't bring this up, but after Gigantomachia transformed and started barreling towards Shigaraki, apparently, because we didn't know that happened until after the fact. Um, yeah, we lost a couple of people, like well, not lost, but like they're damaged really heavily. Shoot, that guy that was hanging out with the guy who can pass through things. I forgot his name. The guy that can eat things and like assimilate their abilities.
Lemillion, the
Yeah,
one that
the
can
guy,
pass
the friend of Lemillion, and like got hurt. The Chimera guy got hurt.
Sun
Um,
Eater. Sun Eater got hurt. Yeah.
and
But at this point, we're not even like. At this point, we're not even really keeping track of the deaths. Like at 358 or so, or 403, they're just panning over Gigantomachina's path, and you just see like either dead or awfully close to dead heroes just kind of strewn about. And like they just, you can see at least four of them just laying there, like most, if not dead, then it's thoroughly out of commission. So
thanks
you
to
just, they just
Gigantomachia,
like, and that's just like one little shot of like what Gigantomachina has been doing.
well, he's the walking
So
disaster. He's living up to his name.
yeah, and when they were talking about abandoning the cities, they list 18 cities. Like Gigantomachina, as a supplement to what's going on here, is ridiculous. Like they're evacuating 18 cities at least, and then they just kind of cut to something else, and it's and possibly implied that they're continuing to reading it. They just left it, you know.
Being a Gigantomachia, another topic that we can actually end on here is that, I mean, it was kind of you already suspected this, but well, thanks to the Doctor, we got confirmation. The Nomus were all
Yeah,
made from him.
told you so.
It's not like I didn't believe you. I'm just saying that if it was, it makes sense because like it's like that, but that kind of confirmed to me like okay, that's I remember them talking about brains and like how personalities really make things difficult. That's why the Nomus that we've seen so far, the ones that have been giving people trouble, don't have personalities. They don't have the ability to act on their own. They don't have free will. Gigantomachia does, and his free will. I mean, as underpowered as it is more like I won't listen to you unless I deem you worthy type of situation.
Right.
So, but he still has a personality, which is allowing him to make that choice. It's choice that's really neutering them. But unfortunately, because he's still really dangerous, they don't care. They just keep him in the background just in case. But yeah, to his suspicion, he was correct. They confirmed it here that all Nomus are made based on him. He was the first one.
The prototype, yeah.
Which is still crazy, but like that confirms, okay, it's gotta be his personality because there's nothing else wrong with him. Guy is literally a walking wall. Like if the Great Wall of China can move, that's what we'll be looking at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, but okay. I actually haven't looked this up to see. I don't think they're gonna like skip a week, but this kind of thing that they would skip a week on. So I'm gonna check it out real quick.
If they do skip a week, do you want to catch up with Dragon Prince with me, and we'll do a 2 episode Dragon Prince instead next week?
I mean, that was the idea, just in case.
Yeah,
But
that would be good.
I don't think that they would do it here. They probably would wait to skip an arc because we're not even close to Christmas yet. So
Yeah, I'd rather be on the same page with you with Dragon Prince though, and not having to do this dance around, not spoiling anything. So you're right. He does get really pierced. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the Bakugo scene because I'm looking at the end of the episode. He does. It's amazing that he does something like that. And it was the plan too, to some extent too, because he tells everybody what to do, and everybody listens to him, and then he flies out there and gets stabbed. Nobody expected the black thing to emerge, like the black chard.
Okay,
doll.
so no, there's no skip.
He does. He says little brother. At 2120, he points at him and says little brother to Deku.
Yeah,
And
he
then
said
he
that multiple
stabs.
times throughout this conversation. Actually, whenever he's emerged, it's,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like looking back at some of the things we were talking about earlier there for a second. Anyway.
these are small things he's actually said. He's actually like the first time he tried taking over Shigaraki, and when Shigaraki said no, I don't want to be better than you, and suppressed him, he mentions it too, little brother.
It's brilliant that Bakugo says my body just moved on its own, which is what Deku said when he saved when he tried to save Bakugo. My body just moved on its own. Like that's like episode 1 or 2 when he said it about saving Deku, about trying to save Bakugo.
But I think honestly, what I was trying to get at with that is like this just opens up another door in development. Bakugo is finally open to, I guess, developing him further now, whatever that
Yeah.
means. There now that wall has collapsed, sort of. You know, he's literally saved. He's literally put his life in front of someone else to save them, something that he wouldn't have done beforehand. So it's like it's cool to see this development. You know, it's he's the change that I've been waiting for has finally showed up. I was almost giving up. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool. I was like, okay, yeah, I want to see where they take him. I hope that wherever they take him, it doesn't get screwed up in the long run. But we'll see. But I guess with that, we can end the podcast here. Thank everybody who's stuck around for this entire thing. And we'll be returning next week for the next episode of My Hero Academia, along with another episode of Dragon Prince. If I had to, Jock, what I'll probably do, I'll just watch, because you're on episode 5 already.
I'm one episode of ahead of whatever one we just watched. I've watched one episode ahead of what we're talking about, whatever that happened to be.
What I could do is watch that episode and then watch another episode just to get caught up, but we just won't review it. But I will know, I guess, everything you mentioned if you do say something ahead of the episode.
Yeah.
So I might do that. I'll let you know if I do that, but I don't know. We'll find out.
I did pretty good this time at not spoiling anything, but I'd rather just like speculate with you 100%. You know.
I mean, we'll see what I'll do. It started kind of late. Before I should have started more on time, but my fault. I wasn't keeping track of when Dragon Prince was coming out. But I guess.
Did you stop the stream?
Gonna end this podcast here. We'll be back next week, guys. See you later.
Take care, everybody. Bye.